I was the first generation in my family to graduate from high school, much less college. So college was not presumed. I mean, it was, my parents presumed I was going. But it was, what that meant was I was unconstrained by kind of where people thought I should go. The fact that I went at all was such a blessing in my family. I went on to law school, and so I thought I would be a prosecutor. I was the only person in my law school class to say I was going, because I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor and a good guy and all that. I was at first a local prosecutor in Brooklyn, New York. I then went on to the federal service. I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York. And almost immediately, I started working international cases. I had only traveled outside the country to Mexico and to the United Kingdom. I hadn't traveled very much. But I was working these international cases. I then came down to Washington to Main Justice. Principally, my real stint down there started during the Clinton administration, where, interestingly, my entire chain of command was women. So the Assistant Attorney General for Criminal, for whom I was the Chief of Staff, was Joanne Harris, criminal defense lawyer from New York. The deputy was Jamie Gorelick, and the Attorney General was Janet Reno. And it had never occurred to me to think about were there men or women. I was mostly surrounded as a prosecutor with law enforcement who were men. But it was extraordinary, because this is the period in my life I got married, I got pregnant, I had my first child. So Janet Reno showed up at my house when I got out of the hospital to hold the baby, and there was just this environment, incredibly supportive environment, at a critical point in my career. I had this entire female chain of command. My progression into national security things was a little haphazard, but it made perfect sense, right, to me. So I went on to run the Office of International Affairs at Justice. You can't do that. You can't get involved in international relations without bumping up against national security issues. I then became a Deputy Assistant Attorney General for international programs, which meant I helped coordinate international law enforcement training. I then went on to run what is now the National Security Division at the Justice Department, was then the Office of Intelligence and Policy Review, so I was responsible for the FISA process. I'm so happy we're not here to talk about unmasking. Oh my God, I didn't think that anybody'd ever care what I knew about that. And once I was there, I was into the intelligence community, right? Because we were reviewing the legality during the Clinton administration of covert action, and I was in the thick of it, and I knew I had found my passion. I went from there. I decided I wanted to run an intelligence operation, so I went, of all places, over to the Coast Guard, got them admitted to the intelligence community, and instituted a whole bunch of programs there. 9/11 happens, and shortly thereafter I get a phone call to go over to the White House. Great story. I get a call that I'm supposed to go see Dr. Rice, and coming from my background, I'm quite sure it's not Condoleezza, so I think this is an OBGYN, because I've now had my second son, and I think, I've got to make my appointment. Condi Rice would tell you I'm the only one who's mistaken her for an OBGYN. And kind of the rest was history. I went over, I'd worked both for Republicans and Democrats. I come in, and George H.W. Bush is president. When I come into federal service, I'm at the my entire stint at the Justice Department is during the Clinton administration. And so, I really was a career person. It would not have occurred to me to have any direct contact with political people. It wasn't who I was or what I did. And frankly, when I was interviewed by Condoleezza Rice, I said that to her. She wanted me to come over to the NSC. I didn't know very much about the NSC. She was interviewing me for her deputy. And I said to her, I'm not really a very political person. I'm not sure I'm the right person for the job. And her point to me was, this is the NSC. I don't really care what your politics are. As long as you understand somebody else is going to make the decision, what we want is your advice. And it was such an extraordinary thing to me to find myself there. And I was there about a year when I wound up being promoted to be the Assistant to the President for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism. And so to me, even to ask the path, I can't recount it without thinking it's been an incredible journey, but it had more to do with following my passion than there was, as you can tell in the telling of it, there was not a plan. It really was about following your passion.